Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Caitlin Smith, your webinar host from Main Street ROI. We're very excited to be having another of our Master Your Marketing series, where we bring together leaders in the digital marketing world to bring you great content focused on ways you can grow your business. This series is sponsored by all of our partners, including ActiveDEMAND, Adriel, Lucky Orange, WooRank, AddThis, Optimizer, and Likeable Local. For today's webinar, we're excited to welcome Adriel Michaud. The presentation will be about 40 to 45 minutes so that we can leave plenty of time at the end for a live Q&A session. Feel free to type any questions you have in the Q&A box along the way, and we'll get back to them at the end of the webinar. As always, today's webinar will be recorded, and we'll send out a replay video along with a PDF of the slides to everyone who has signed up. So if you get calls or are pulled away for work, don't worry, you're not going to miss a thing. With that, I'll turn the webinar over to Adriel so we can get started.
Thanks, Caitlin. Yeah, I was on a Google webinar the other day, and they always start those things like 3 minutes late. I think it's so that the late people showing up can get in. I always hate it. I appreciate starting on time and being ready for the presentation. Can you see my screen there, Caitlin?
Yes. Yep. I can see it.
Perfect. We're ready to roll then. So thanks again for having me on and giving me some of your time out of your busy days today. Like Caitlin mentioned there, we'll shoot for 40-45 minutes and then we'll have questions. If you have anything that kind of comes to mind, feel free to just type it in that question box and we'll get to it towards the end. My name's Adriel Michaud. Right now I'm the VP of Marketing at ActiveDEMAND. I've been using marketing automation since about 2006, which is, for the technology, a pretty long period of time. It hasn't really been around that long, but I've been using it for a while. I came into this through programming, and through programming I got into the automation, the digital marketing side of things. And what I really love is the science side of digital marketing, because there's so much that's measurable and so much that you can pull out of it. You can really turn it into a science instead of just like a dark art. So that's a part I really love. I've got about 9 years agency side experience, and then the rest is all client side. Just a little bit more about the company I'm representing. It's called ActiveDEMAND. It's a marketing automation platform, and we've made it for marketing agencies out there, B2B companies, SaaS companies, and increasingly we've been working a lot with senior care marketing teams. For today, I might just interchangeably say clients or customers. So if you're a B2B, imagine customers. If you're a marketing agency, imagine your clients. And really, today, the one thing I wanted to talk about, and it's something that I've been talking about since about 2008, is this idea of attribution driving strategy. So we talked today, and the topic was finding out what digital ads are working and proving that it's working. And I really think that piece is key, and it has been key for so long. Some companies are doing a really great job of it, but some of them aren't. So let me talk a little bit about how this all plays into strategy. So the old way of how you would do campaign strategy. Imagine, like, if any of you have seen Mad Men, like Don Draper. You do a pile of research, you talk to some customers, you go talk to some prospective customers. Maybe you come up with some insight over a whole bunch of whiskey like Don Draper, or maybe maybe you don't need that encouragement. But the old way of thinking, would give you this on-demand burst of leads. You would do the campaign. The campaign would have a definite start and end date. You would have things typically in a blocking chart. Week 1, we're going to put this message in market. Week 2, we're going to put this message. We're going to use these channels, and so on and so forth. Using this style of campaign strategy would put a lot of money on the research and planning, and a lot less on the execution and the optimization of channels, because you were consistently changing out messaging in market. There was not so much opportunity for optimization of those channels and learnings from using those channels. And I think this style of campaign strategy is still being used today, and I think it's still a really great way of doing a brand awareness campaign. But if you're looking for like direct response or leads, or you're going to use digital primarily for your channels, I think there's a better way, and I see other agencies and other really good in-house marketing teams starting to use this new style campaign strategy. So the first part of getting like a really nailing this new style of strategy is to confirm the client goal. So if you're an agency, this means getting the goal in the proposal. What does the client expect you to do? If you're in-house, this might mean like an annual marketing plan that has a stated goal. And the reason why this is so critical is if your agency side, you've definitely experienced this. If you're in-house and your boss is great, maybe you've never experienced this, but clients and bosses change their mind. They change their mind about what they want to see from marketing. And the problem with that is that it's not so good for job stability, and it's not so good for developing a marketing strategy that's really going to work. So definitely start out with like a really solid confirmed client goal. And the next piece that you want on top of that is some measurements that can be proven that actually go towards that goal. And this is where we start tracking marketing attribution. Attribution just means we know where our sales are coming from, where our leads are coming from. If you're a nonprofit, where our donations are coming from. So you need to know this attribution bit. Now, once you have these two set up, the rest of it starts to become, it's not obvious because of course you still need great strategists and great research behind it. But creating a digital ad campaign when you have a solid goal in place and you have solid measurements you want to influence becomes a lot easier. Becomes a lot easier because you know what the goal is, you know what you're supposed to be doing, and you're not just wishy-washy adding a whole bunch of things in. One of the things that I've discovered through my years in the industry is just a lot of people fancy themselves to be digital strategists, but really the piece that they're interested in is using lots of different channels in creative ways. I think when you were talking about digital strategy and a really great campaign that matches goals, a great strategist will use the techniques and the channels that will get the results that they need. So I think that that's the bit that's missing from a lot of people today, and the piece that we really need is that attribution. So the last bit, and this is the part where we really go off script from the old campaign strategy, was this measure, optimize, add channels, enhance creative, this really ongoing process that we use. So there's no end date to this thing. If we start a marketing campaign and it's working, we keep going. we don't just turn it off just because we hit the end date on the campaign or the budget was expired, right? We keep generating leads for the company. We keep bringing donations in if we're a nonprofit. We keep recruiting new people if we're working for a recruiting firm, right? We keep hitting the goal and we keep moving forward. Now, this ongoing process, if you're in-house, it gets you better results and you'll hit the goals that you had set out for you in your quota, or the ones that perhaps you set out if you manage a team. If you're agency side, your clients are going to be happier and stay longer. And the interesting thing about this is that you're generally putting more money on channel management. So you're spending more money and more time on Google ads and Facebook ads instead of most of the time on the strategy and the timing and that kind of thing. Now, the piece that we really need to nail that I see in most campaigns failing with is that first little bit, not getting the client goal, not getting definitive measurements to that goal. And then kind of, it's not winging it afterwards, but boy, like give it a couple of months and it sure feels like winging it when you start second guessing it and you start looking back at that campaign and you start looking, man, why do we choose this thing again? Oh, we thought this would be a good idea. Why do we think it was a good idea? It doesn't have any backup, right? So we need that attribution. We need that piece that tells us, what's working. So maybe just so I can just introduce the concept of attribution. Attribution is being able to prove that your digital ads and your marketing works. You should be able to know your marketing's influence on prospect behavior. Really what we're trying to do is take, all these people who don't know about the company and get them to know the company or the organization. And then those people who know about us, work them down the sales funnel to the point where they can contact sales or do whatever we're trying to do for marketing's goals, right? And the interesting thing about this is if we know the influence and we know it really, really well, we can predict future behavior. We can predict how our audience is going to react to a particular piece of content or a particular channel. Or, if our boss says, hey, what happens if we double your marketing budget next year? We can actually answer that question. And if the boss says, hey, we want to have your marketing budget next year, we should be able to come back to them and say, hey, okay, you want to have the marketing budget. This is going to be the impact if you do that. We are going to lose this many leads. We're going to lose this much business. And when you're able to speak at this level, you get a seat at the table, at the management table, that is really worthy of marketing's impact on the business. And the thing that I really like about having really great attribution is that you make strategy that doesn't suck. Because too much strategy out there is based on hopes and dreams, and not enough of it is based on what we know is working. Like, there's still some experimental stuff, of course, that we'll always have to do, just to test the market and test new channels and that kind of thing. But without using what we know, we're missing out on a whole bunch of intelligence about what channels are working out there. So one question I wanted to ask all of you, and this is I was struggling with how to word this because there's so many different ways of asking this question is, do you fully know how marketing gets customers in? So if you were to take a look at 100 customers that your company got in over the last year, what percentage of them would you know the story of? Would you know how marketing influenced them? So I'm just going to launch a real quick poll here, and we'll just wait, say 30, 45 seconds for everyone to answer that. And I know that sometimes when I ask this question, I actually get 0 because no one's asked that question before. We just haven't been looking at it, or we've been assuming, or every once in a while sales tells us, this number, or they tell us that a customer came in through this, or a customer saw our advertising. Oh, that's interesting. Now, the real question is, if they saw the advertising, did it influence them? Did they buy anything because of it, right? It's not enough just to see us in a magazine. They actually have to do something based off of it, right? All right, that seems like we've got just about everyone voted there. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. And really, most people are answering right in that 30 to 50% range. So there's not like a high level of understanding of how marketing is influencing customers, and that's super normal. But really, the question for a lot of you out there, a lot of us don't get enough business to make really strong statistical analysis of our customers. But we hamper ourselves even more when we're only able to make it on a small portion of our customers. So if you're only able to look at your marketing and understand how it's influencing 30% of your customers, you got to ask yourself, is that enough intelligence to make like these make or break decisions on marketing? Should you kill a channel if it hasn't delivered a customer in the last quarter? If you don't make a lot of sales in a year and you're only able to really understand 30% of them, maybe that's not enough to go off of, right? So that's why I'm talking so much today about understanding attribution and understanding where these customers are coming from, because it's so important. Number one, it really improves your craft. I've interviewed, I don't know, let's say like 50 or 100 marketing people in my time, just in hiring. And one of the interesting things I found is that the years of experience that person has doesn't really matter. And I know that sounds like heresy to some of you out there, but the problem is some people are marketing in areas where they know their results very, very closely. I could think of auto dealer marketers, if they're in the right organization, really understand how they influence their customers and how they influence their buyers. And some of those marketers are better for their years of experience. So reason number one why enhancing attribution should be important is you will improve faster if you know what works. you will improve faster than everyone else because you know how marketing actually influences a customer and you're not just guessing or going off of a sales trend or something like that. Reason number two, it increases your value. This is a selfish thing to think about, but as we're all out there in the market as human beings that have value in delivering work, you will increase your value if you understand how your work influences your customers. And just beyond this, beyond both of these, job security. If you're at the mercy of a boss or client, you need to be able to show performance that's beyond just a sales trend. If you have like really, really good attribution, you should be able to show marketing's impact even in downtimes. Here in Edmonton, Alberta, our economy swings wildly based off the price of oil and gas. But there has been times where I've been marketing for some of my clients where it's been a downtime and their sales have been level or maybe even a little bit up. They've been gaining in market share. Now, the interesting thing about knowing marketing's impact, if I'm able to show that impact to them, they're able to see it, and they're able, like, even if their sales are flat, they're able to say, "Wow, that's like, yeah, they're flat, but we know that the industry is doing X and we can see our marketing is doing Y." So we know marketing is actually doing terrifically for us. The other thing that this is going to help with is if your boss or your client point of contact changes. You get a new person in, they are going to look at everything with a fine-tooth comb, and they're going to see whether they're getting impact or not, and they might fire you. That's a possibility. Now, it's a lot more difficult for a new person into an organization to come in and look at something that's clearly working and then decide to turf that agency or that marketing person. So if you can show marketing results that are driving business performance, you're golden. And that's really the crux of why I'm talking about this. So enough of why, let's talk about how. Improving attribution, step number one is purely just focusing on it. You can focus on it, you can report on it. I think there's a lot of companies out there that might even be on this webinar right now that maybe have fantastic tools, that maybe have fantastic analytics, but just don't share the results, or just don't look at the reports, or just don't look on a periodic basis. So step number one really with this is just putting a little bit of focus on it. You don't have to spend like every hour of every day doing attribution, but spending some time on it, making sure that it's included in quarterly reports, monthly reports, however which way you report out is going to put some focus on it and is going to put some analysis on it. And the first step that I recommend to everyone on attribution is just to ask at point of sale. If you're talking to customers out there and your sales is talking to customers, just ask them, "Hey, how did you hear about us?" And you can find some really interesting things there. One of the interesting things, this tracks offline marketing that's kind of notoriously difficult to measure. It does a pretty good job of it. You can find some new insights really nicely from this one. One of the things that I found when I ask clients, sometimes they'll tell me, "Oh, you know what? Today I clicked on a Google ad, but I've seen you guys at a presentation before." Oh, well, that changes the attribution story, doesn't it? It's because now that PPC click was actually an assist, which is still important, but that presentation was the introduction. And really, this is something that you should be doing anyways. Even if your sales team is responsible for this kind of stuff, as a marketer, try to either get on a call, get on a recorded call, or if you can, just call a customer and ask them yourselves, because this firsthand information and insight from a customer is really interesting to get, and it's practically free. You could do this in like 5 minutes. You can call a customer up and say, "How'd you hear about us? I'm just from marketing. I want to know a little bit more about how our customers are using our content, how we're helping our customers," and it's an interesting thing to get insight out of. Now, some of the downsides of this technique, number one, customers forget. They might have seen a PPC ad and they claim they clicked on an organic listing or the free listing, or maybe they were influenced some other way and they just forget about this kind of stuff, right? Number two and number three are kind of connected. You need to train sales and follow up on sales in order to do this. You need to to get buy-in from sales management. Hey, marketing needs to know what marketing's working so we can deliver more leads for you guys. So you may need to train your salespeople. And then the third point, this is manual, right? So we need to manually ask customers. We need to insert it. If you guys can, if you have your sales team on a CRM, try to get them to add this to the CRM on a consistent basis so that once a quarter, once a month, whatever, you can go through and analyze results and just kind of compare notes, see what sales is saying, and see what customers are saying about how they found out about the company. Now, the second one that I wanted to talk about, and one that I'm sure everyone here has, is Google Analytics. I love Google Analytics. I've been using analytics since it was this company Urchin that Google bought when it was like on a server side. Anyways, old war stories. Nice things about Google Analytics: it's free. It's super easy to use. Like the interface is so powerful and easy to use. It integrates with Google Ads. It integrates with a whole pile of stuff. And really, like as a first blush, Google Analytics is fantastic for getting a lot of these quantitative is like numbers-based results on attribution. And really, if you're e-commerce, it might be enough. You might get enough information from Google Analytics to make like really smart decisions. And if your conversions are pretty airtight, Google Analytics is fantastic. Now, where it doesn't work all the best is, you know, that ease of use point. Sometimes that works in not so much in your favor. If you haven't used Google Analytics a lot, or if, God forbid, your boss gets a hold of Google Analytics, they might come out with some faulty insights on what they think they're pulling out of Google Analytics. They might come up to your desk and say, hey, you know, our bounce rate on this unsubscribe page is really bad. I need you to do something about this unsubscribe page that the bounce rate isn't quite so bad. But then you have to inform them, hey, that's because it's an unsubscribe page, and the users are getting exactly what they expected out of that page, right? But really, like the issue here is that it's easy to get the wrong idea from Google Analytics. There's a lot of metrics in there that might not matter all that much, and there's a lot of them that do matter, but take a little bit of time to kind of configure and set up. And then the other issue, and the biggest one really, if you're running on lead gen or lead generation basis, is that not all conversions are the same, but Google Analytics reports conversions as conversions, right? These are anonymous, so you can only run quantitative analysis, not qualitative, where we're actually digging into that person. And if you do a good job on setting up Google Analytics, your conversions might report on lots of things. Let's say you have email addresses on your website. You could configure Google Analytics so that all the clicks on a mail to, which is your email addresses, count for something, and you might set those up as a conversion. Or you might set up form fills. But then what happens if the wrong person fills out the form? Or what happens if a spammer fills out the form? Or what happens if someone clicks on an email but doesn't actually convert? What happens with all this stuff is that your conversions end up being this huge number, and some people might report that to the client as a lead. And they say, hey, you know what? We delivered 100 leads to you last month. And the sales manager might look at that and say, what? I think I saw 5 really good leads come through, or 10 really good leads come through last month. What are these guys talking about? 100. And that really breaks trust when it's not, again, an airtight conversion where you're not sure that it's the right kind of conversion. But wait, not only are you over-reporting on leads, you're actually under-reporting as well. So you're over-reporting on this kind of stuff, but that's not the only way that customers convert. There's a ton of ways that customers could come into the company, and you're only tracking a small portion of them with Google Analytics. Now, again, some companies out there, and you might be listening and say, hey, our conversions are airtight, and they might be. But there's a lot of different ways that most companies will see customers coming in. Now, you could add some information into, say, Google Tag Manager and use it to track a lot of this stuff, but some of the stuff, not so much. Phone calls, only in CRM. Like some of these are going to be a little bit more difficult to track. And that's going to contribute to you not having a high percentage of confidence in knowing what marketing is influencing your customers. So I'm just going to pick a couple out of here to talk about. And when we talk about these, we need to kind of decide between whether we're going to use kind of like an all-in-one marketing automation or multiple tools. And just to kind of set this up a little bit, really great attribution covers almost all inputs and conversion points. You're not going to get them all. Like the reason why I didn't have a 95 or a 98% option in that poll there is most people just don't get there. It's very difficult to cover that many conversions because there's lots of different ways of starting business with someone else. You can start it through a referral. You can start it through a sub account. You can start it through lots of different ways. So great attribution is going to cover most of them. And then when you think about it, there's going to be these all-in-one tools versus integrating multiple tools. Some platforms will do more of these functions in the platform, or some of them might just integrate with others. And I'm going to show the difference between those in just a minute here. And the third point, regardless which way you go, whether you go all-in-one or integrating multiple tools, you need a central place to track all those prospect touch points. So if Bob from Acme follows you on Twitter and opens an email and calls you, you need somewhere where that's stored. If Bob isn't a prospect, they may not belong in the CRM either. So you might want to have, you might want to think about a marketing prospect database of some kind. And really that's what a marketing automation tool is that central database of prospects that aren't quite sales ready. And then you need to integrate with a whole pile of stuff out there. So you've got your standard advertising channels, you've got your analytics. If you can get your CRM in there, fantastic, because now you can get that really solid feedback from sales on what's closing. And then there's everything else. I've got Google Calendar in here because sometimes setting up an appointment is the right conversion, and it's not filling out a form. And there's all these other kind of things, right? I'm just going to pick like a couple out of here. Let's talk about call tracking. And then the reason why I'm talking about call tracking is because so many customers out there still start business with a call. If you're in B2B and you're selling big bad things, you probably don't have pricing on your website. It might be calling for a quote, or it might be calling for a quote based on volume kind of a thing, right? And if someone goes to your website, you need to be able to track that kind of stuff, right? So really what we need to do is set up tracked forwarded numbers for brochures, TV, in-ad. You've seen these. All the TV advertisements that are on TV right now, they don't use their standard 1-800 number. They've got a special 1-800 number that when you call, tells them, we got a call from our TV ad. Fantastic. So that's piece number one that we need. Piece number two that's becoming more and more important is dynamic phone numbers for your website. So on your website, when a visitor shows up, you need that phone number to change based on the visitor so that you can connect the website session with that phone call. And that's one thing that more and more companies are starting to do. And let me tell you, it's amazing because it takes you from that, let's say you're at 30%, it could take you from 30 to 50%, for example, just because it's still such a popular way for customers to come in. And then the third point I want to just put out there, if your calls are anonymous or your call tracking is anonymous, you're going to lose that qualitative measurement again. And I'll show you what a qualitative measurement is in just a second here. Call tracking looks like this. This is a real user. Now I anonymized some of their information, but this is a real user that called us yesterday. And there's a couple of really interesting things that we got out of this. One, okay, they visited the website. Two, we get the source. They came from Pipedrive. Cool. Okay, they came from this CRM website. And we get this really interesting qualitative information. We get to see how a specific customer, how marketing influenced them, how the website influenced them, and then how they called us, right? Now, you want to go a step further. What if we record the call and transcribe the call? Now, of course, if you're in a state with one-party consent, you need to make sure that you say this call may be recorded for quality assurance purposes, which is pretty standard these days. And here's what you get out of that. You get some really interesting stuff. You get your call duration, you get the phone number, the name. Okay, Bob Barker didn't really call us. I'm just using that name as a stand-in. And this helps qualify what kind of call it was. Again, like if you were just to measure all phone calls as a lead, sales management is going to look at that and say, nah, I call BS. I don't think that's real. But if you can look at the phone calls and you can look at what kind of phone calls you got in, that's going to be really different. And you can look at the keywords that they're using. Oh, that's very different. And you can listen to the calls. Oh, like as a marketer, this is a dream come true because I can listen to customers based on the marketing that they saw, and I can see if my unique selling propositions struck home or not, because I can listen to see if they talk about them, to see if they're interested in them, or I can listen to see if they have objections that those USPs hit or not. So again, this is really good feedback that you can get back from call tracking, and really cool information for marketing and for advertising, right? I could talk about a Google ad that drove this user in, and I could say, you know that Bob Barker guy? He actually came in through a Google ad. And here are the things that they said on the phone call, and here's how long they spent on the phone, and that kind of thing. And that's super powerful, right? That makes it real for a lot of people, whereas telling someone I got 100 conversions last month doesn't seem real, right? Just take a sip of the third coffee I had today. Hopefully I'm not going too fast for you guys. The next one I wanted to talk about was email tracking. Because this is, again, just another thing to think about with email tracking. You might want to use track links in your emails. I'm talking mostly about like those email newsletters that you're sending out to customers if you're sending out email newsletters. Now, if you're sending out email newsletters, you want to make sure you're using track links. And really, if you're using like a platform worth its salt, it's going to do this automatically. It's going to automatically use track links in your emails, and you'll probably get in Google Analytics the source of the traffic, right? Oh, it came from our spring campaign, for example. What you don't get without a really deep integration, or without that platform that you're using or natively sending the email, is open and click on a per prospect basis. Let me tell you a story about why this is important, and I got it from yesterday. We sent out an email. And 5 minutes later, we got a conversion from someone else at the same company. Now I can see that the first person that we had emailed opened the email, but then I don't actually get a connection after that. All I see is this other person converting. Now, if I didn't have the same platform doing my conversions and showing the email open, I could still do it, but it would be more difficult to see that connection and more difficult to see the influencer effect that my marketing couldn't actually view. Like I'm inferring, right? I'm guessing we emailed Bob, and then 5 minutes later, Katie called us up and asked us for a quote, right? And it happens a lot with us. So this is another thing that's interesting to kind of think about, is how that's going to integrate with all of this as well. This is a reminder for me as much as for you, just to take a breath, because we've been talking about a lot of tracking. I want to come back and I want to revisit why, and I'm going to talk about what great attribution sounds like, because when you have really good attribution and you know what digital ads are driving business, you say different things to your team, and you say different things to management. The first thing you might say, hey, Google Ads assisted or was a conversion point for $168,000 of our business last quarter. That's really different than we sent out a Google campaign and it got this many impressions or this many clicks, right? That's very different. This is something that the other people in management will respect and understand. An email follow-up after the sale gets us a new Google review 20% of the time. This doesn't speak directly to ROI, but it does speak to marketing's influence, right? Hey, if we have these sales and we send them an email right afterwards, we can get a Google review, and we know the Google reviews are really important for our business, right? Using Facebook ads, it costs us $305 per new customer. Now, again, depending on your business, that might be a fantastically low number or might be a horrifically high number, but I'm just giving an example here, right? Knowing our cost per acquisition for customers is super important because it talks to scaling and predicting. If our boss comes up to us and says, hey, we can double your budget next year, if we know a number like that, we can predict what the results will be. And that's something that most marketers out there just can't do, right? Bob from Acme was originally from an Instagram contest we ran last year. Again, tying in those marketing channels, tying it to a person's name is super interesting, and it's something that most of the people in the company will understand. And more of the people, again, like if you want to kind of climb the corporate ladder and get into management and that kind of stuff, knowing this kind of stuff and being responsible for this kind of stuff is super critical. Because at the management level, they'll know about some of the big customers and they'll know about Bob from Acme. And if your fun little Instagram contest brought them in, man, that's really interesting. And you've got the key to doing something interesting. And finally, this helps with VP of marketing level stuff. If you have a marketing department that you're running and you're able to show the results for the cost on your marketing department, now you're not just a cost center, now you're a revenue center, and you're a predictable revenue center. This is a very different way of talking that, to be honest, some of the people on this webinar might already talk this way, but I bet most don't. Most talk about marketing as a cost. Most talk about marketing as a, yes, we put the money in, we don't really know what's working. This is like not only knowing what's working, it puts a point on it. It makes it something that is very easy to understand. And this is what you need if you want marketing to get the respect it deserves in company and with your clients. You will have a seat at the table when you're able to make statements like this, because you're able to show your importance and the importance of what you're doing so easily. And the other thing, I haven't even mentioned this today, but the other thing that doing this really allows is some respect around your work and around your craft. One of the problems we have in marketing is HIPPO, the highest paid person's opinion. The boss comes in and says, like, I think the colors should be blue, and you know that blue's not such a great color. If you have numbers like this, they're less likely to mess with you and mess with your stuff and your domain, because they know what a crucial part you play in the organization and in the results of the organization. So let me come back to how you can do this. And really there's a couple of different options. In terms of improving your attribution, if you're doing nothing today or if you're doing very little, the cheapest way and the fastest way to do this is start asking at point of sale. When you close the customer, ask them. Or when they come in as a lead, ask them, how'd you hear about us? And even that little step is going to start giving you some insights. The other thing to look at is to start using Google Analytics. Again, it's a free platform. It solves the quantitative thing very well, and it's pretty easy to use and get into. Google has really good training on it, and it's going to put you in the right mindset of analyzing and questioning everything. Now, the second option that you have is to use a lead tracking platform. Lots of lead tracking platforms are out there these days. They're all pretty cheap and cheerful. Typically, like a lead tracking platform will do forms and phone call tracking, and they'll make it very easy to do those two things. You'll put a tracking script on your website, you'll buy some phone numbers, and you'll be off to the races, and you'll be reporting on more than you reported on in the past. Now, if you're looking at doing that and a lot more, it's time to look at typically like a marketing automation platform. Marketing automation platforms typically track more conversion points. They'll still offer some of those call tracking, and the setup and cost can be about the same as a lead tracking platform out there. So if I'm allowed to be like biased at any point in this presentation, I would say like marketing automation platforms will offer the most power in offering attribution. And I could show you an example. I'll show you ActiveDEMAND, the software platform that I'm representing. You can track advanced website usage. Yes, they'll do built-in and they'll support Google Analytics. We'll do phone call tracking, built-in, super integrated. I showed you a couple screenshots along the way here. Email campaigns, built-in, website forms, built-in, or just use whatever forms you're using right now. Online chat, CRM, email, calendar, office, and lots of other stuff, right? And sometimes, like for some companies out there, this is going to be really important, tracking all these different ways that that people come in. Some other companies will get most of it from just a few of these different conversion points. But since today is all about like showing results from digital advertising, I'm going to show lots of different stuff, right? And the other piece that you can pull out once you have all this stuff, once you have like imagine all these different touch points being tracked in one place where you have your customer, your prospect, you can get a user journey out. So I'll show my example here. We had this agency in Atlanta, and I met with them a couple months ago, and I sent them an email about the platform. And you know what? An interesting thing I saw, their VP of marketing opened that email about once a month. And again, I can get that because it's in one spot, and it's in all my prospect information is in one spot. And then I saw that that VP clicked on an ad, a Google ad that we had on March 6th, right in the morning. That was interesting. March 6th, the afternoon, the marketing manager came to the website direct and signed up. Now, the question I have for you is, using your current system, how would you have scored that? What marketing channel would have won, if any? Because I can tell you how a lot of them would. A lot of them would see that and say, oh, we got a direct conversion. And that would be the end of the story. But you can see here that it's not the end of the story. There was actually lots of stuff that happened that marketing was responsible for that led up to that. So if I could leave you with two things, one of them would be getting that tracking in there is absolutely key, because we're going to be able to see what marketing's working. The other one, I love sharing stories like this. I like sharing these stories internal to the company because it helps other people see what we're up to in marketing, and it helps them understand how interconnected this stuff is and how important this stuff is. So I'm going to I'll leave you with that. But if you'd like to, you can head over to ActiveDEMAND.com. We've got free trials over there, and then we've also got like a whole ton of resources on attribution and digital advertising, like a blog, podcast, and that kind of stuff. And we're hiring if you're looking for a job as well, or if you're looking for a change in the industry. So at this point, I think I can head over to questions. Caitlin, are you still there?
Yep, I am here. And it looks like we have a couple questions already, if you want me to go ahead and read those out for you.
Yeah, you bet. That would be great. Thank you.
Awesome. And if anyone else has any questions, go ahead and pop those in and we'll get them answered too. So for starters, we have Ashley, and she asked, what ways can you prove your ads are driving sales to a client if they do not have an e-commerce site?
Yeah, I mean, and I think like that's a good question, because I think that's most companies out there. Most companies out there still aren't e-commerce. They still don't sell online. They sell with the salesperson. And I think the critical transition for marketing to sales in a company like that is on a lead basis. So a lead is a name, a phone number, and they're interested in our products. You can't just go buy a list of people and say, oh, look at these 1,000 leads that I got for you guys. They have to actually be interested in the thing. So for a lot of companies out there, that's a website form fill from an interesting customer asking for a quote or asking for more information that can then be passed on to sales, or it can be a phone call, again, from an interested customer. So for most companies out there, it's going to be on a lead basis. You may get those leads into your CRM, like Salesforce or Pipedrive or something like that, or it might be an email over to sales.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And it looks like we've got one more. Homar, I hope I pronounced that right, says Shopify now offers a breakdown of analytics. Would you recommend this method?
Yeah, you know, anytime you're working with e-commerce, the nice part about that is you may put all your sales through that e-commerce. So I guess the question is, do you have any conversion leaks? Like, do you also get customers in through phone calls or through emails or through volume purchases, or are they all just e-commerce transactions? And can you do qualitative analysis on it as well, not just quant? So quant would be, I can see that 10% of my business is coming in through PPC. Qualitative would be, I can see that Bob from Acme, my big buyer that just bought wholesale like $1 million of product, came in through PPC, because that's interesting by itself, because not all conversions are the same, not all sales are the same. One of your channels might be bringing in a pile of one-time customers, and then one of your other channels might be more expensive, but bringing in those lifetime customers that have a bigger lifetime value.
Okay, awesome. It looks like we've got another one here. Nicholas asked, is there a way to ID phone calls from current customers using the web page like a phone book?
Yeah, so one of the things that I was showing on that screenshot from ActiveDEMAND there was the name from the person that was calling in. You can get that in a couple different ways. One of the ways you can get it in is from caller ID. Caller ID is kind of hit and miss though. The better way, if you have a customer that's already contacted you before or filled out a form, or you know them, is that they're already in the system and their phone number's already in the system, and they can be treated differently. They can be treated as a call in from a current customer or current contact. So you can route that phone call differently. You can track it differently. You can show metrics differently based on that phone call in. And I think that's again a really super interesting thing, because you don't want all phone calls to all be counted as a lead, because a phone call from a current customer is a support phone call, right? And you need to score those differently.
Okay. It looks like we've got another one here. Do you have a spreadsheet or a flow chart of the tracking tools you use or recommend?
Oh, that's a tough one. So the ones that I recommended in this presentation with like Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, and really like if you're going to go all in and do a really great job of tracking everything, a marketing automation platform like ActiveDEMAND would really be the way to roll here. Just because the tracking ability is better and the attribution is better. I'm VP of marketing, so one of my roles is that I have to, every quarter, I have to do a report that says, hey, here's how we got our customers. In the past, at previous positions, this was a lot more difficult. I'd have to crack out Excel or Google Sheets, and I'd have to get a couple of different platforms and download some information, go look it through the CRM, try to like cross-match this stuff, and it was like a real mess. Whereas, I did my attribution report in 5 minutes for the whole quarter. So I would say that for me, that platform for tracking tools would be ActiveDEMAND. Surprise, surprise, right? I mean, we use our own product to track our own success as well, right?
Can't blame ya.
Oh, it's so powerful, right? Once you've got that many conversion points that you're tracking, your attribution levels are still fantastic, right? Like we can attribute a lot more of our customers and how marketing influenced them, and that makes it so that one of the issues with marketing is you got to worry about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Maybe looking at a marketing channel that does this work or does it not work? That's really the question we're trying to answer all the time here, and it can be difficult if the attribution isn't there or if the reporting is onerous to get to.
Awesome. Well, it looks like that's it for our questions. If there is any more questions, actually, you can shoot them over to support@mainstreetroi.com, and we'll get them over to Adriel. So
Awesome.
again, yeah, just in case, that email is support@mainstreetroi.com. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining today's webinar, and thank you so much, Adriel, for this great information. As a reminder to everyone, we'll be sending out that replay video and the PDF of the slides too, so look out for that. And we hope to see you next month for our next Master Your Marketing presentation. So thank you, Adriel, and thank you everyone for joining.